in households that use dishwashers, they're more likely to get atopic conditions like eczema, asthma, things like that, allergies, than households that hand wash their dishes. And so we think this is all like the hygiene hypothesis, right? Where if we're too clean, we don't have the ability to develop tolerance to multiple things.
For those viewers and listeners who don't know what the microbiome is, when it's formed, what helps it form, what disrupts it, can you give us a little insight down that road?
Yeah, let's go in.
Okay.
So I love to use the analogy about a forest. So I want to go into that because it makes it a little bit more tangible. But our gut microbiome is a collection of bacteria, fungi, viruses, protozoa that reside in our gut. We have about 100 trillion microbes, which isn't even conceivable, really. Like, we don't even know what 100 trillion looks like. It's a lot of microbes, 10 times the number of human cells that we have. The cooler part in my mind is the genetic composition. So we have about 20,000 human genes that make up our proteins that form our hormones and things like that. We have 20 million microbial genes.
20,000 versus 20 million.
Versus 20 million, yeah. So we're 99% microbial from a genetic standpoint and 1% human, which is insane. And those genes make things for us, and our microbial genes and our human genes can both make things for us. From a time perspective, you know, humans have been around for about, Homo sapiens for about 300,000 years. The Earth has been around for 4.5 billion years. Microbes have been around for 3 billion years.
Whoa.
And so, you know, like 67% of the time microbes have been here, 0.0067% of the time humans have been here. So these guys are like way older than us. There's so much wisdom in them, and we really need to start thinking about us and our microbes as a collection, which is the holobiont, which is us and our microbes, because they're really part of us. When we think about the forest analogy, you know, you have different kinds of forests, right? You have like the Arctic tundra, you've got rainforests, you have the redwoods, like all these look very, very different. And just like that in our human body, we have the ear microbiome, we have the nasal microbiome, we have the uterine microbiome, we have the vaginal microbiome, we have the gut microbiome. They all look very different, but they're still forests, they're still ecosystems. And then within the forest, we have trees. Those trees produce oxygen. They take in our CO2, right? So we have a symbiotic relationship that happens in nature. Just like that, we have it in our gut too. So we have our microbes that take in the fiber that we can't digest, and they produce metabolites for us that help us communicate with different cells in the body, help us produce things, neurotransmitters. So we have this symbiotic relationship that we really see in nature a lot too. Now, one of the questions you just said is like, what happens when it's disrupted? Like, what happens when there's a forest fire? Like, it wipes out all of the trees, the plants, the ecosystem. And just like that, like when we take broad spectrum antibiotics or even PPIs, things that can disrupt the ecosystem, it can wipe out the gut microbiome. And so will it regrow? Yes, it definitely will regrow, but will it regrow differently? Probably. Just like if a forest fire comes in, sometimes more invasive species overgrow because they have the chance, because they don't have the competitive nature of the environment anymore. And so there's definitely things like antibiotics that can affect it. We're really resilient, and so we will bounce back, but broad spectrum antibiotics over, you know, months and months can really wreak havoc on your gut microbiome, and they target diversity, which is the biggest factor of the microbiome. You know, if you think about what makes a good microbiome, diversity is like one of the biggest things, which is, you know, in that forest, how many different species of trees do you have? How many different species of monkeys do you have? How many different birds do you have? Like, that is diversity, and we want that same diversity to be in our gut microbiome too, for just general health. So when does it form? It forms when we're in the amniotic sac in our mother. And so we used to think the amniotic sac was sterile, and it's definitely not. There's microbes actually in that amniotic sac. And then it's going to be changed by whether we have a vaginal birth or a C-section. So we know that that changes the gut microbiome based on which one we go through. And then the next factor is breastfeeding versus formula fed too. Although there was an interesting study that I just read that moms who are stressed during pregnancy actually have babies with lower levels of bifidobacterium. And so bifidobacterium, produces B vitamins for us. It helps us produce other metabolites as well. But stress with mom before you're even born can affect your microbiome. Mom, if she's exposed to a bunch of different species of animals while she's pregnant, her baby is less likely to have eczema and asthma. That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a lot of this stuff happens actually before you're even born. And then when you're born, formula fed versus breastfed. And some women don't have the option here. So there's no shame, there's no shoulda, coulda, woulda. But the fact of the matter is that you have different microbiomes that form. The first few weeks of life are really crucial to forming the microbiome. And so breast milk has human milk oligosaccharides. These are these prebiotics that we can't digest. The babies can't digest themselves, but their bacteria can. So it changes which bacteria are actually there. And human milk oligosaccharides aren't found in formula. So, you really want those in the breast milk if you can get it for your kid. It helps reduce IL-6, which is an inflammatory cytokine. It helps increase secretory IgA, which is really protective to the gut lining too. And then after you're breastfed, when you start eating adult food, that's when the microbiome shifts into your adult microbiome. So that's where we see you kind of go into what an adult microbiome looks like.
So when you are just born, right, and you said the first 3 weeks are so important, does that leak into your adult microbiome, or can we miss those 3 weeks in really feeding the baby and helping build those precursors to a good microbiome, and then once it's fed, the baby starts eating better? Or is that going to predetermine a better adult gut health? Or are those first 3 weeks before they're eating food and breastfeeding, is that most important?
Yeah, the first few weeks are really crucial for the microbiome formation. It doesn't mean that you're screwed in the first few weeks if something goes wrong or you can't be breastfed or anything like that. You can definitely be healthy. But we do know those first inoculation steps definitely start to seed the microbiome. And so, a lot of the change happens once you start eating adult food. So I think that you probably can rebound, but some of the stuff we don't know, we're still exploring.
So you mentioned eczema, and what was it? Was it asthma?
Asthma, yeah, the atopic conditions with women who are exposed to multiple species of animals while they're pregnant.
Okay, what are some products or things that we have at home that can really disrupt our gut microbiome?
In households that use dishwashers, they're more likely to get atopic conditions like eczema, asthma, things like that, allergies, than households that hand wash their dishes. And so we think this is all the hygiene hypothesis, right? Where if we're too clean, we don't have the ability to develop tolerance to multiple things. And so our immune system has to learn somehow, right? And it learns through tolerance. So it's exposed to an antigen, and then it says, nope, that's not me. That's something else, and I will attack it, versus, oh, this is my human cell, so I don't want to attack that. And so that's how we develop tolerance to things. And eczema, asthma, these are hyperexcitation of the immune system, right? Where they're reacting when they shouldn't be reacting to things. And so we don't want an environment that's too clean, because we want our immune system to constantly learn, especially when we're little. And so, yeah, we just hand washing your dishes so that there are some germs on it can be really, really beneficial. Going to the farmer's market, so some of your veggies have a little bit of dirt on them still, same kind of idea.
Which makes sense because so many, if you even look at this, we had this guy, Rodney Habib, and he is so, he is a leading voice when it comes to animal health, especially pets, dogs and cats. And he was talking about a study that dogs raised on farms live longer, right? They have less disease that they deal with, right? Because they're exposed to all of these different antigens all day, every day, since they're puppies, versus dogs in cities.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And we're so close to dogs.
Humans are the same.
I know, and we're so
Humans are
close
the
to dogs,
same.
which makes so much sense. So the one thing that you mentioned is antibiotics, and a lot of us, it piques so much interest because so many of us, I included as a child, had persistent ear infections, right? Probably because of the stuff that I was eating. But I went on a few rounds, and then when I was a young adult, strep throat, I went on a few rounds, once a year, twice a year.
Yeah.
How, I know it it depends on the type of antibiotic, but how much is too much and how often is too often of the antibiotic to start causing real disruption to our resilient gut microbiome?
Yeah, yeah. And we don't have an exact answer to this, but what I tell people is that you don't want to do more than you need to. And so antibiotics are life-saving. Like, we should be so grateful that we have these things. We really, really need them, but we should reserve them for when we really need them. So the amount of, viral infections that get misprescribed, misdiagnosed, and put on antibiotics is pretty astounding. And so we want to make sure that you have a bacterial infection that's not going to resolve on its own. And that's when we want to use an antibiotic, because they can be really useful in those instances. If you have a viral infection, antibiotics don't do anything. And so we don't want to just jump to it, say, oh, it's day one, I don't feel good, I'm going to go on a Z-Pack or something like that. So you want to make sure it's a bacterial infection and that it won't resolve on its own, and then that's when the antibiotic is necessary. So you got to talk to your doctor about that and see, like, is it necessary, is it not necessary, and just do case by case. The less, the better. But you don't want to have a life-threatening bacterial infection that you don't treat with antibiotics either.
And very good information, because there's a spectrum where they're like, never antibiotics because I don't want to disrupt my gut, whereas they can get really sick from bacteria.
Yeah, of course.
But
we
you
should be
mentioned
using science, like how it's meant to be used.
So one of the most important steps that you can take in bolstering your immune system is getting quality sleep. On the show, I talk about the importance of sleep quite often, and Ned is a partner that is extremely helpful in achieving a great night's sleep. So Ned's best-selling blend, the Sleep Blend, is new and improved, and it's offering an even greater night's sleep for you. The new formulation blends CBN, which is a powerful cannabinoid that promotes sleep, with 750 milligrams of USDA-certified organic CBD from the purest single-source hemp flower extract and organic and wild-crafted botanicals that are traditionally used for sleep. The new Sleep Blend has 24% more sleep-inducing botanicals by weight than the previous version. And as always, all of Ned's full-spectrum hemp oil is extracted from USDA-certified organic hemp plants. These are grown by Jonathan, who's an independent farmer, and his family in Peonia, Colorado. These products are science-backed and nature-backed solutions for your overall health. Now, they're chock full of premium CBD and full-spectrum active cannabinoids, but also terpenes, flavonoids, trichomes. What you're getting in this bottle is a holistic blend, right? It's not an isolate, but a holistic blend of all of those important constituents you need for your overall health, especially when it comes to sleep. Ned's full spectrum hemp oil nourishes the body's endocannabinoid system. This is inherent. All of us have the endocannabinoid system and respond actually to CBD. And it offers functional support for stress, sleep, inflammation, and overall balance. Now, one of my favorite parts of Ned as a company is that it's fully transparent. It shares all of its third-party lab reports, who farms their products, their extraction products, all right there on the website. So if you'd like to conquer your sleep, right, get better sleep, deeper, rejuvenative, restorative, waking up and feeling good with Ned's Dream Set, Heal Thyself listeners, you're gonna get 15% off with the code DRG. Go to helloned.com/DRG and enter the code DRG at checkout. HELLONED.com/DRG. You're going to get 15% off. And thank you, Ned, for sponsoring the show and offering our listeners a natural remedy for some of life's most common health issues.
Four Sigmatic makes coffee crash-free by adding in functional mushrooms from places like this.
Hyvää huomenta.
Four Sigmatic, deliciously balanced for body and mind.
Four Sigmatic has been on my radar for quite a while. They have a really great line of products that taste good. But I always wanted to check if they're quality. And when I found out their quality, I said, let's get them onto this podcast because they're really good. So Four Sigmatic helps people achieve elevated wellness overall. It's one of their approaches and missions to health with the world's most nutrient-dense ingredients. So Four Sigmatic is plant-based, organic, and utilizes clean formulas that promote physical, mental, and emotional well-being to protect your body against the stressors of modern life. And who listening is not stressed right now? So Four Sigmatic, they've been at it for quite a while, 10 years, and beginning with their pioneering mushroom coffee. Their product portfolio is diverse, but their vision has always remained the same. Four Sigmatic believes that the earth has provided us with the most nutrient-dense, powerful foods, and the goal is to make it easy and delicious to bring these wild foods in the most sustainable, clean and authentic way into the Western world, where we arguably need it the most, right? So there's the bridge and alignment of the way that we see healing and nature and the connection to nature. I'm a believer that nature has given us all the things we need to really thrive and survive, as is Four Sigmatic. So it's a really powerful partnership we have. Four Sigmatic, the coffees are delicious, and they're a magically easy way to elevate your overall wellness, right? So they have a premium coffee, which is 100% USDA certified organic, fair trade certified, and third-party lab tested for mycotoxins, mold, heavy metals, pesticides, and more. All the things we look for in a quality product like coffee, with the world's most beneficial ingredients like lion's mane mushroom extract and wild harvested chaga extract. And what it does is that it supports crash-free focus, immunity, gut health, stress response, and more, right, with a perfectly roasted morning brew. Four Sigmatic also has a perfect plant protein. You can elevate your day with a delicious blend of 5 plant-based proteins, 7 functional mushrooms, and adaptogens, and 0 fillers. They're crafted to taste amazing, without stevia and artificial flavors. They use whole food ingredients for your taste. So you won't find a single grain or gum to weigh you down or upset your stomach. And this will help find smoothness back into your smoothies. Four Sigmatic is amazing. They've created products for your immune system to balance stress, to improve your overall well-being. Their coffee's super popular. A lot of people love them. Their plant-based protein is super clean. So to get your hands on it, I want you to use the code DRG. You're gonna get 20% off of all your orders on foursigmatic.com. Remember, that's DRG, and you're gonna get 20% off of all your orders. All you gotta do is go to foursigmatic.com. Thank you, Four Sigmatic. So, you were talking about breast milk, the prebiotic oligosaccharides, and how they're helping our microbiome build. And then let's say mom or dad are listening right now and they go, hey, look, my kid is just getting off breast milk right now, starting to eat food. Are there certain foods that we introduce to a child early on that are really pivotal in this really essential time for gut microbiome seeding or growth? And if so, what are those foods?
Yeah, I don't know a ton about pediatrics, but just from the gut perspective, you want to try as many foods as possible with your kid. And so I think, kids can be really picky, and, some of my favorite videos are like watching infants try foods, right? Because the faces they make are so adorable. But you want to try different varieties. So like if they love squash, then try different varieties of squash, because those are all going to have different fiber contents, different polyphenols. So polyphenols are what make our food different colors. And those are prebiotics for our gut microbes too. So they actually seed the gut microbiome that way too. So mostly plants for kids and adults, but just a ton of variety of different plants, and then a diversity of just different foods in general. So fruits, veggies, all of it. And yeah, just trying little bits here and there and see what they like. I think you'd be surprised by like what kids will actually consume.
Yeah, I find once you introduce these foods early on, their palates get used to it, because there's so many picky, young, like 9, 10-year-olds will say, who don't want to touch vegetables.
Yeah.
Right? That's because they've been eating processed food since they were 4, 5, 6,
It's hard to switch back for sure. So if you start with whole foods, I think it's probably easier. We'll wait to see when we're parents, because we might be watching this later and be like, we were so wrong.
Right, we were so wrong. New study shows Triscuits essential for bifidobacterium.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to say.
But kids are fun too, so you could like make it a game that you have the goal of having every color of the rainbow during the week, and say, okay, do we have our purple vegetables today? Do we have our green ones, our red ones, our yellow ones, orange ones? And so that's a great way to get diversity in through that.
What I found back when I was in school, we used to go to, like, as outreach elementary schools locally, and we would have superheroes for each color of the rainbow.
Cute.
Right? So I'm like, well, blue really gives you a big, strong, healthy heart. So you can do all of these activities. And this orange one, you're gonna have laser beam eyes. You can see from far away. Yeah. And they're like, laser beams.
Yeah,
and I was like,
so
yeah,
cute.
more orange. And then we give them like cut up, and they're like eating them, and they're like, wow, I feel stronger.
That's
awesome. But, that's the way to do it, utilizing
make it fun.
colors, and just, kids always want to be like, so I think that was a super cool tip. I always held it in the back of my head until I have children.
Yeah. Superman vegetables.
Superman vegetables.
I like that.
But diversity, we had Will Bolsowitz recently here, and he was talking about the importance of fiber and diversity in plants. And is it that the diversity in plants add different constituents that one doesn't and the other one does? Is it all fiber across the board that is, the string that connects them all? What is it that the diversity gives to our gut microbiome?
Yeah, great question. And so it's going to be a few different things. It's going to be the composition of the actual food, so the different nutrients that it has as well. The fiber is the big piece of soluble and insoluble fiber that we can't digest. Our microbes digest for us. And so we want to give them the food because it is that symbiotic relationship. So we give them something, they give us something. And then it's the polyphenols, the antioxidants too. And so different polyphenols are found in different vegetables, and those are different fuel sources for different microbes. So it's going to be all of those things, but also the, vitamins, minerals too that they have.
So that's a relationship. You scratch my back, Mr. Microbiome, Miss Microbiome. I'll scratch yours.
Absolutely. And then my thought is, which I don't know this, is that if you go to the farmer's market especially, and there's, like a little bit of dirt on them or something like that, but they also, I'm guessing that vegetables house different bacteria just because of their contents, right? Like, is their skin waxy or is it really thin? And so different bacteria may be on different vegetables, which then you may consume and get the benefits from too.
So should we be washing our produce really deeply, or are we supposed to just chew on a little dirt?
I think it depends where you're getting it. So if you know it's an organic farm and you know the farmer, I rinse all of my stuff. I don't bleach it. I don't scrub it. I really just rinse it with water, and I think it's good to go there. I think if you grow your own vegetables at home, then picking them and eating them and knowing that, they're good, I think that's a great idea.
That's the dream. For people like us in LA, we got to wait to get a backyard.
Yeah, I know.
Whenever that happens, or wherever that is. But yeah, that's my dream, to be able to pick out a radish.
Yeah.
We have a mutual friend. She made me a salad once, and it was everything was straight from the garden, like 20 minutes ago. And it hit so much different than a salad from even like the local grocery store here.
Yeah.
I felt good. I felt strong, and my gut was celebrating. What is it that they give back to us, our gut microbiome, when we feed them? How are they scratching our back?
The gut microbiome produces metabolites. And so these are like, just like the tree produces oxygen for us to consume, then our gut microbes produce different neuropeptides and things like that. And so a few of the things that they produce are things like tryptophan. So tryptophan is largely influenced by our gut microbiome. It's an amino acid, right? And it's the precursor to serotonin and melatonin. So, a lot of the tryptophan that's being produced is because of the gut microbes that we have. People say, right, you've heard the quote, like 90% of the serotonin is produced in your gut. The serotonin produced in our gut is produced by enterochromaffin cells in the gut. And it can't cross the blood-brain barrier. So the serotonin in your gut really is focused on motility of the GI system, so like movement of the GI tract, also like heart contractions, heart rate. Serotonin does things all throughout your body. It doesn't always go for your mental health, happiness. Right. What we do see is that, the serotonin can potentially talk to your afferent nerves, which are the nerves that go up to the brain, and maybe communicate with your mood that way, which is great. But the tryptophan that we produce around, because of the gut microbiome, can cross the blood-brain barrier and go into the brain, be converted to serotonin, that gets converted to melatonin too. So we, happiness, feeling good, reduced anxiety, all from the serotonin, and then melatonin helps you fall asleep at night too. So that's really, really important that the tryptophan is getting pushed around by the gut microbiome there. There's a study looking at germ-free mice, which is one of the best ways to think about, like, what does the microbiome do? So when we say germ-free mice, we mean these mice have been wiped of all of their microbes. So they don't have any gut microbiome. And so we look at them and we see that in germ-free mice, they're producing about 60% less of this tryptophan, or the serotonin, from the cells in their gut. And so we really think like that serotonin production is also largely due to the gut microbes that we have, which is fascinating. So tryptophan, like the serotonin connection, BDNF is influenced by the gut microbiome too. That's brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And this one's really important in mental health because, in mental health, we talk about all the time making new habits or changing our perspective, changing the way we think. All of this stuff requires new neuronal connections in the brain. So if you've been depressed for 4 years, your brain is on a circuit of depression, right? Thoughts, actions, habits, behaviors. It becomes like overdrive that you're really ingrained in this pathway. And so BDNF helps you create new neuronal connections, new pathways that could lead to new behaviors that could reinforce positive changes or positive thoughts or, different things that can help get you out of that too. So BDNF is driven by your gut microbiome in part. So having a healthy gut could help your mental health in that way, which is fascinating.
Yeah, listen, I can attest. Anytime my gut's off, my mood's off.
Yeah.
It is, I noticed this years ago, but it is like a direct mirror.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And
Yeah.
anytime I don't feel bloated and I don't feel heartburn and my gut is just, I can eat anything.
Yeah.
Oh, I just happen to be way happier that day.
Yeah.
It is, and before I started hearing about the connection, I was like, I feel like when my stomach hurts, my brain hurts.
Yeah.
I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But now we're starting to understand what some of the mechanism and molecules that are affecting us. And it's so cool that, in essence, like for us to feel better mood-wise and in our bodies, all we got to do is just feed those buggers in our gut, and then they'll send us out a celebration of molecules that'll make us feel better.
They can definitely help us.
And
for
sleep
sure.
better.
And sleep better.
Right?
Which makes us feel
Which
better.
makes us feel better. It's the craziest cycle.
Yeah.
All right, so what are some of your top foods for feeding those buggers? What are some of the best things out there?
Yeah.
People viewing and listening, they go, okay, I gotta get to the supermarket right now after this podcast or while listening to the podcast and get these.
Cool, yeah. Foods high in prebiotic fibers. So those are going to be like your Jerusalem artichokes, onions. Those are two of my favorites for prebiotic fibers. Mushrooms, things like that. And then you also want just foods high in fiber in general. So like all of your non-starchy vegetables, as well as your starchy vegetables, things like sweet potatoes, yams, cucumbers. Ginger is one of my favorites. So ginger has molecules that reduce, COX and LOX enzymes, which are inflammatory pathways. It also helps speed up motility in the gut, which can really help prevent any dysbiosis or overgrowth of bacteria there. Ginger is a prokinetic in that way. It's one of my favorites for gut health. And then your demulcents too. So demulcents in naturopathic medicine are things that are almost mucilaginous, where they provide a film, a barrier. They soothe the tissue. So things like slippery elm, marshmallow root, even aloe as well. Can help soothe the GI tract and protect our lining, because intestinal permeability can definitely affect your mental health because things can cross over. LPS from gram-negative bacteria is really implemented in leaky gut, and that can definitely affect our mental health. So things that protect it, like those herbs that I mentioned.
I love them all.
You love them
Except
all.
I'll tell you right now, Jerusalem artichoke, one little knuckle of it and I'm gassy for 3 days.
Yeah, so you have to be careful if you're predisposed to small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or IBS, where the fibers can exacerbate things. But-
When you have someone getting on a higher fiber diet, do you have them just jumping into it or slowly moving into it?
Slow.
And why? What's the point of doing it slow? Does it have to accommodate? Does it grow slowly? What is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like what you said. So if you get exacerbated by a little Jerusalem artichoke, then we don't want to start there. We want to start really small, and so that you get used to it, and then maybe add some prokinetics so that we're flushing things out too, tons of water, but go really, really slow and gradually increase the amount of fiber over days so that you're not feeling the GI distress, which is not fun.
Well, that's what I find when people are on a standard American diet or even on, let's say, carnivore diet, and they go, now I'm going to be vegan. And literally in 2 days, they're eating 40 grams more of fiber than they were
Too
eating.
much.
And they're like, I can't do vegan. I get bloated and I have heartburn and I'm constipated and also diarrhea. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, take it easy.
Go slow. Start low, go slow.
Start low, go slow.
Yeah.
What I have found that helps, really helps, is I have a jar of sauerkraut. And before every meal, I'll take a tablespoon, eat it, chew it, put it back in.
Yeah, I didn't say that. That's another great food for your gut.
It helps so much for me. I find about a week of doing that, it's already better. By 2 weeks, my gut is back to being optimal.
Beautiful.
When I don't do it, it's back to just my body is just more sauerkraut,
Yeah, fermented foods are great. Sauerkraut, kimchi is one of my favorites. I love kimchi.
Kimchi is a nice one. And I like kefir. Coconut kefir for me is really good, and we had the fermenting fairy.
I love that.
You know her,
Yeah, those are
she was
products.
talking about that being one of her favorite ones. That and sauerkraut are like really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we mentioned a little bit about tryptophan, serotonin, which a lot of people are familiar with, and melatonin, which a lot of people are familiar with, especially in the context of taking it and going to sleep. The gut and the brain are connected. And you mentioned about nerves, afferent nerves maybe. Well, what's the nerve that connects the gut and the brain? And how is it that when our gut, I mentioned before for me, when my gut is crappy, my brain is crappy.
Yeah.
What's happening? Is there inflammatory molecules overtaking my gut, going to the nerve? How is this happening? And what's happening in my brain when I'm not eating that sauerkraut and I'm just eating on the go?
For sure.
You know, like healthy but packaged foods, and it's just not serving me. What's going on in my body?
Whew, big question.
Big question, but we got to know.
We got time. Okay.
We have time.
The gut and the brain are connected through a variety of different ways. So one of the ways is composition, like who's actually in your gut can affect your brain health. And so, you know, we can go into that, but there's different species that can actually affect your mental health. The other way is through the actual vagus nerve, is a direct connection between the gut and the brain. And so the vagus nerve innervates everything from the mouth to the lower part of the colon, and that is a bidirectional communication, which means that your brain health affects your gut health through the vagus nerve, and your gut health affects your brain health through the vagus nerve. And we see that. So, you know, there's an example that I like to give, social isolation, which we should be familiar with right now. So social isolation increases the chances that somebody may develop inflammatory bowel disease. You know, adverse childhood events specifically increase the likelihood that somebody could experience inflammatory bowel disease. And so, you know, we look at that communication, but then we also can look at the flip side, where if you give a rat inflammatory bowel disease, that rat is likely to have an increase in activation of the amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, okay? And so the fear center of the brain increases anxiety, hypervigilance, feeling like you're not safe. And so we see how, you know, both adverse childhood events, things that happen that affect our mental health, can actually affect our gut health. And then the other way around too. And so that's, you know, that vagus nerve connection where it is bidirectional for sure. And then we talked about the metabolites. So those metabolites are a way that our gut and brain are connected indirectly, where, you know, you produce butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid from the fiber that you consume. Butyrate crosses the gut barrier, goes into our bloodstream, circulates, and actually can reduce NF-kappa beta. NF-kappa beta is an inflammatory molecule, also involved in ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. But NF-kappa beta in the brain, you know, and just inflammation in general in the brain can increase the risk for depression. And so we can see that communication too, where it's a little indirect through the bloodstream up into the brain. And so we have all of these different ways that our gut and brain are connected. And then the other big one is the immune system. So that's a way to communicate things from the gut to the brain indirectly. About 70% of our immune system resides around the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. And that is going to affect inflammatory cytokines for sure. And like I said, inflammatory cytokines and depression and anxiety are definitely related because of neuroinflammation and its effect on our mood.
Powerful.
Super powerful.
Powerful. You just mentioned 4 ways which our gut is affecting our brain health, and vice versa, brain health to gut health. Now, I imagine a child who has an adverse event, who also has a really crappy diet growing up, and then more adverse events and more crappy diet through the years, how both the brain and the gut are communicating in a way that is inflaming the other, inflaming the other, inflaming the other. And then once they finally start eating healthy at 20 years old, they're like, what's going on? Right? Because I have IBS, IBD, my gut's a mess, my brain's and my mental health's a mess. It really
can spiral.
It can spiral. And it sounds to me that early on, it's really a pivotal time for all the parents listening.
Super, super important. Yeah, the social isolation one I was going to mention was if you have animals that are socially isolated, then they're more likely to develop ulcers in their gut, which I think is fascinating. Like they need human or animal connection. So I think, you know, we have to be thinking about all of it when we're thinking about the gut. Somebody comes in with gastritis, like, a conventional gastroenterologist may not say, like, have you seen people
Right.
recently? Like, what's your friend group like?
Right.
And it seems like that's a question we should be asking if there's a lot of inflammation in the GI tract, because if it can happen to animals, there's no reason why it can't happen to us.
It's just incredible to think what no doctor ever in my life when I was a kid has ever said, what's your friend group like? And I'll tell you right now, I've had IBS diagnosis in 2007, colonoscopies, endoscopies.
Yeah, same.
They go, and nothing you could do, just you're stressed about school. I go, okay, what else? Like what am I, I'm on heartburn medication. My stomach exploded. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But now I think as we're expanding and understanding the research, hopefully more holistic questions are asked that have to do with our mental health also. In the 4 parts of where you talked about the gut and the brain being connected, you mentioned about composition or the constitution of the gut. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so who's in your gut? Like, which strains of bacteria are actually in your gut? So this is like, looking at like which types of trees are in the forest, and hopefully you have a bunch of different ones there. But there's been a lot of studies, a lot of them are animal studies still, but there was a mice study that looked at, giving them Lactobacillus rhamnosus, a strain of bacteria, reduced anxiety and depression in the mice. And so that one's actually really interesting, where that study, they gave them the Lactobacillus rhamnosus, anxiety and depression reduced. They did a vagotomy, so they cut the vagus nerve. And what they noticed is that it no longer had the effect. And so if you breach the communication between the gut and the brain through the vagus nerve, you really diminish the effects that you may get when that's established. And so that's showing that in that instance, the Lactobacillus rhamnosus was communicating with the brain through the vagus nerve to reduce anxiety and depression. And then there's been strains like, I think it's Bifidobacterium longum in humans reduces anxiety as well. To be totally honest, clinically, I've tried some probiotics for anxiety and depression. I haven't gotten great results with them. But I don't think that we just throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think we need to figure out, okay, what amount do we have to give? Is it more about, strengthening the microbiome and giving those things, but also getting rid of some things too to get the effect? So it's complex.
And are those probiotics added into a diet that's already high in prebiotic
Right,
and
they have
probiotic-rich
fuel
foods?
sources too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of different factors.
I mean, I've seen so many companies saying, this probiotic is the best for anxiety out there. This one's the best for depression. And they probably have those species that are found in the literature, but it's good to hear someone clinically saying, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
We're kind of just getting started on it.
We're getting started.
Right?
Yeah, and I think we need to ask bigger questions. So is anxiety and depression always going to be due to your gut microbiome? Absolutely not. So as clinicians, we should be really trying to figure out, like, how likely is it that the gut microbiome is the main driving factor or just a small piece? Like it would be totally different if 2 people come into my office and one of them has a great friend group, has a supportive significant other, has a great job that they're passionate about. Like, it feels like all the boxes are checked, and they have diarrhea. And so maybe that person is more likely to respond to a probiotic for their anxiety than somebody that comes in who is socially isolated, hates their job, works 90 hours a week, isn't sleeping, right? That person, I'm more likely to say, okay, there's so many other factors that may be contributing to your anxiety that we should check off first before giving Lactobacillus rhamnosus.
Way more complex than come to my office, take this probiotic, your gut's going to be better, and guess what? Your brain's going to be better too.
Yes, it's a piece of the puzzle that we should definitely be addressing, but maybe not the whole.
Yeah, and I wonder in general how much mental health is coming from poor gut health or other factors. Maybe it's 80%, maybe it's 10%. But I think we'll learn over the years even more as more research comes out. Vagus nerve, you mentioned that as one of the important connectors. What affects our vagus nerve? Are there certain things that really disrupt the health of our vagus nerve? Should we be doing things to support our vagus nerve? Is the strong, let's say even if the gut health's poor, what if we have a strong vagus nerve? Is that going to overcompensate? Like how do we approach vagal nerve health? Because I've seen that many places.
Sure. So our vagus nerve is, it's crucial to our gut health. What I've seen be most effective in clinical practice is walking for the vagus nerve. So walking induces a parasympathetic state more so than a sympathetic state, which means rest and digest. And so the parasympathetic system is all about calming down but supporting digestion. So if a tiger comes into the room, the last thing that you want to do is eat a burger and have a shake. You're going to be running away. So when you go into fight or flight, your body does not prioritize digestion at all, nor should it. And so if we are walking after a meal, it actually helps us digest our food because it keeps us in that parasympathetic rest and digest state. It also helps with just like the actual impact of your feet to the ground to actually move the food too. But that's what I've seen hands down be the most effective thing there. You can do some calming breath work too to calm down the parasympathetic system, meditation as well. We talk about vagal nerve stimulation, which I'm really interested about. There's a device now that you can put behind your ear that's supposed to stimulate the vagus nerve. I've had one patient try it. She said that she thought it did help a little bit for her, but haven't had enough people to actually make any claims about it. But that's an exciting option there. And then in some conferences we've had speakers talk about vagal nerve stimulation through gargling, singing, even like gagging yourself. A gag reflex induces a vagal nerve activation. And I used to prescribe those things to my patients when I was first practicing, and nobody got results, so I ditched them.
I agree. I sing Elvis every morning, and I gag myself with my toothbrush every morning, and it does nothing for my gut health.
So things in theory can do something, but if over time, like you're just disproving it's not working, then you need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So there's the theory of something and that it may actually work for some people, but I haven't seen that be effective. Walking I've seen be really effective. I think singing is effective just because it puts you in a better mood.
Yeah.
You can't be like, unless you're singing a really sad song.
Like melancholy Elvis music. Yeah, I do that every morning. But that's good because the emotion comes out. And then I go for a walk and then I'm happy and I sing happy songs.
Okay. Yeah.
But I agree, actually, I know you're a big proponent of walking after meals. And I remember you put up a study and I was like, you know what, I need to walk more after meals. So what I often do during the day is I'll eat and then walk, and then I'll come back and then I'll get back to work. So I'll take like a 10-minute break and just do a walk around the block.
Yeah, beautiful.
Or sometimes if I need to, I'll schedule some stuff where I'm on the phone, but I'll eat before. So I always make sure to walk, and it's really helpful.
Yeah, it's really helpful for your GI system. Constipation does really well with walking, really, really well. And the other thing I love about walking is that it acts as a sponge to like soak up all the glucose from your meal without the use of insulin. So your muscles after movement or during movement become insulin-independent ways for glucose to be absorbed, which is great, preventing prediabetes, diabetes, all metabolic
What role does high blood sugar and poor insulin usage in the body, right? Any resistance, how does that affect the gut microbiome?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of research with type 2 diabetes that you can look at. The biggest thing, if somebody has type 2 diabetes and they come in, I'm going to say, the chances that they have delayed gastric emptying, where they're not actually processing the food and it's not going into the small intestines soon enough is a lot higher. So you can see a lot of GI disturbances in people that have insulin resistance or type 2 full-blown type 2 diabetes, absolutely. And then, I guarantee there's changes in the gut microbiome too. So I don't remember the study off the top of my head, but Archimansia is a bacterial species, and you can, I believe, give it to help with insulin resistance. But again, I don't want to quote that one there. But there's definitely alterations that happen in the microbiome with type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance. What's interesting is that there's about 1,000 genes in the liver that are affected by our gut microbes.
To our liver too.
In our liver, yeah. So we have the gut-brain connection, but we have the gut-liver connection, and the liver is the source of like a lot of our metabolic activity. And so we know that there may be correlations with obesity, with the liver and the gut microbiome, because our gut microbes are turning on or turning off genes in the liver based on who's in our gut. So it's fascinating, the possibilities of the gut microbiome. And the research has been going on for years and years and years, and we still are just like skimming the surface as to what we know.
Incredible.
about it.
I think 20 years from now, we're going to see gut microbiome, one big control panel, all the species controlling our whole body, the food we want to eat, the mates that we choose, the things that we do. I think it's way more implicated. I think we're just human flesh bags controlled by microbiome
By
organisms. By bacteria. They're calling the damn shots, and we think we are.
Bacterias.
Right. Well, I have a culmination of bacteria in my gut that wants me to be a podcaster.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, bacteria.
I'm so glad they chose that for
yeah.
you.
And then for me, I'm like, oh, I'm making autonomous decisions. I'm such an independent thinker. Lo and behold, it's just my damn species.
Wouldn't that be funny? It's like a little like puppeteer of the
It's a
bacteria
puppeteer.
just moving us around.
And to full circle, it goes back to wisdom.
Yeah.
Right? Just because they are not genetically as complex as human beings, I read years ago, the more you go down the chain of complexity, the more wisdom goes up. So once you get to the subatomic, the wisdom is highest. And then you get to subatomic particles highest. So with that thinking, those bacteria are way smarter than us.
They're way more wise for sure.
Way more wise.
I mean, they've made it, what did I say? 3 billion years.
Yeah. And
The Earth has 4.5 billion. We're only around for 300,000. Like we got a lot. They probably learned something in those few billion years they were here without us.
And we're on the verge of extinction after 100 years of just really poor decisions and toxins in our that are causing us to not even to reproduce.
Are we going to make it to 3 billion?
Are we even going to make it? But guess who will? The damn bacteria.
The bacteria will be here.
Who's the smarter one?
It's true.
I think we can close like that. But I love that. Is there anything exciting that you're doing that you want to share, or how people can find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Not as active as you, but I'm on Instagram, dr.marypardee.
Pretty active.
Pretty active. Writing a new gut health course, so be on the lookout for that to be coming around soon too. And then I have a gut health course already with One Commune, so that's an overarching gut health course, which was like my brain dump. So onecommune.com, I think, is the website there that you can find the gut health course on too.
And what's Modrn Med?
Modrn Med is my company, which I should talk about.
Right.
So I have a telemedicine and in-person practice in Sherman Oaks. We all focus on integrative gut health treatments, IBS, IBD, Crohn's colitis, reflux, gastritis, as well as hormone replacements and all the other naturopathic things that we do. But it's www.modrnmed.com, modrnmed.com, and free complimentary consults for people who aren't sure if naturopathic functional medicine is right for them. And we'd love to help you with your gut issues.
Amazing, yes. And go reach out to them. Anyone who DMs me and says, hey, doc, can I practice with you? I go, no, just go to Modrn Med. So, and that's how much I trust you and your work and your colleagues. Thank you for coming on the show. Number 3. We're going for number 4 this year, later in the year.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about some groundbreaking stuff that's not even out yet.
Yes.
It will come out this year, though. But thank you for dropping that wisdom on all things gut, all things mental health, and really just some stuff that we haven't heard yet. I know some things are new to me and the audience, and it's a pleasure having you here, Doc Mary, one of my best friends. Amen to you.
Oh, thanks, bud. I love you.
I love you.